Welcome to the Value Script, the podcast where we bring value every episode for the everyday person. Today, we have a very exciting show. We have some very special guests. Sam Scheid is with us in the house. Sam may not think he's a very special guest, but I've been wanting to have this on this podcast since we started. And you've been one of the people on actually my A-list. Like you're just under like Jordan Peterson and Andy. And
wow. If only.
If only, right? Yeah. You are. Anyway, we're going to talk about why some of the amazing things that you've accomplished in your life. I like how when I just asked you, like, how do you describe yourself?
First and foremost, I'm a father and I'm a husband. That's it. Professionally, I'm a pilot. But my main accomplishments, my most proud things in my life are my family. So I like to describe myself as father of 6 kids and a husband to my wife.
That's awesome. That is awesome. How did you begin this journey?
Yeah. Oh, sheesh. Well, my wife was recently on this podcast. She talked a lot about home education and things like that. And it's kind of come full circle for me in understanding a lot of my personal struggles of having grown up. I grew up in a family, 8 kids. I was the third of 8. My dad was a military dude. Going through school, I was dumb, according to what the schools labeled me as. I was
told by your expert teachers.
Yeah. I'd go to the career counselors and they'd tell me, you're not really thriving in any one place. You say you want to be a pilot, but your math scores are so bad that you're never going to be a pilot because pilots, they require you to understand math and know a few things about it. So I kind of assumed that, I guess I won't be a pilot. That's out of the question. I don't know what I want to be. And they'd ask you those questions, right? And you're in high school and you're like, I don't know. What do you want to be? I don't know. What did he say? I want to be whatever he said. I don't know what I want to be. It was just a struggle for me. So I finished high school, like a 2.3 GPA. I remember trying to fill out they had a career day in high school, and I went to Hillcrest High School in Utah, in Sandy, Utah, Midvale, Utah, whatever. And they had this career day where all the colleges were in town to kind of pitch you on their schools, go here, go there, whatever. I don't remember much about it, but I brought home a few of the applications for the few that I thought I'd be interested in going to, just because that's where my friends were going, or I had heard of those colleges or whatever. Got home and, showed my parents the applications, and they kind of were like, well, it's $35 to apply. How are you going to even do that? And I was like, I guess just throw those away. I don't know. I didn't know. I just assumed that like the progression of life was like you finish high school, then you go to college, while you're in college, you get married, but you also already know what you want to be. And I was still like, I don't know what I want to be.
So at that time, you didn't have a career
no clue,
in mind.
None whatsoever. I ended up going on an LDS church mission to Mexico. And I grew up a lot during those 2 years. How would you not grow up, right? You're 19 years old. You go live in a foreign country. You learn a foreign language. You live with one other person. You have to get along. The other person I lived with, he was Mexican, didn't speak English. So I had to learn Spanish. I had to learn it, I couldn't, if I wanted to talk to somebody, I had to talk to him, and it was only in Spanish. I couldn't just call home when I wanted to. I could write letters home, but that was about it. I think we got 30 minutes every Monday for emailing families back then is how the church missions worked. But I feel like I grew up a lot. I learned a lot about myself. I learned about planning, goal setting, things like that, and just working. That's what else do you have to do as a missionary? You don't do anything but work. Came home from my mission, and it was the same thing. I still wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. I had a friend that he was like, "I'll pay for you to go to school. Let's go to UVSC." It was it's UVU now, but back then it was UVSC. So he paid for me to go to my first semester of college. Takes me down, and I do this placement test.
You had a friend that paid your tuition to go to college.
Yeah.
That's a good friend.
A great friend. He's amazing. His
awesome.
name's Mark Bench. But we go down there, I do the placement test. And again, like I'm so embarrassed, cause I do this dumb placement test. Everything's fine except for math. Like I'm just kind of in the normal, like English is fine. Math, I'm supposed to do math 990. I was like, what's that mean? It's like, well, high school math is not even like, that's like junior high math. Like you're dumb. So like I sign up for math 990 and I show up to the first day of that class and I was like, oh man, like this is like looking around the classroom, just seeing who I'm in that class with. And I'm like, man, like I know I'm smarter than this. And so I dropped that class, and pretty soon I ended up dropping most of those classes. Just cause I didn't feel like I didn't feel like I belonged there, like, So I ended up not really, things happen in life, like my parents ended up getting divorced that year. I was like 22 years old. So that kind of threw a wrench in everything. I ended up just dropping out of school, but I didn't drop out. I just stopped going to class. I didn't know you had to officially
formally withdraw.
Yeah. So I had like a 0
Follow
points,
the rule.
like just my GPA from college, like reflected who I thought I was and who I felt like I was, just like this unintelligent human being. And they eventually let me back in. I was on academic probation. I would do like one class at a time as I could afford it. Do like the easy classes, like I'd do things that I could understand. English, like I would take an English class or I would take a Spanish class. I took, just some of the basic classes just to try to like make an effort at life. Cause I don't know what I want to be still. I'm 21, 22 years old now, feeling like I should have some direction in life. Like I see my roommates and my friends like, oh, they're going into finance or getting ready for law school. They're getting ready for whatever school. Like they're just excelling. And then there's me like still unsure on what I want to do, what I want to be, how I'm going to pay for it, how I'm going to do this, how I'm going to do that. Ended up just doing what every 22, 23-year-old dude in Provo, Utah did. And I ended up doing door-to-door sales for 4 summers. I can't say I loved it, but I didn't hate it either because it was just, you're out in whatever city in America selling door-to-door home security systems. I was always just right in the middle, never like this amazing salesperson. And I think a lot of that stemmed around because I couldn't lie to people. I just, like, hey, can I cancel this contract? Like, if somebody was in my mom's house right now and they were trying to sell her an alarm system and she asked if they could sell it or if she could cancel and they said, yeah, you can cancel it. And then it turns out she can't, I'd be pretty like not happy. So I felt like I always had this, like, I can't like not be so upfront with you. Like, yeah, there's an activation fee. There's these little fees. No, you can't cancel whenever you want. So I was always like, the sales I had were always like super solid. They never didn't get funded or whatever, but I never hit like the 100 goals, or the 100 sales that were required to make your summer actually worth it.
You didn't get the pink Cadillac?
I never got the pink Cadillac. Just drove my gold Toyota Camry, called it the Golden Stallion.
Cool.
All along the way, I always knew I wanted to go into the military. I always like had this purpose, or I always felt like this calling that I just wanted to go in the military. I loved what the military did. I came from a military family. Some of my fond memories of being a little kid were going out to the demonstration days that they used to have at Fort Campbell when I was like 7 years old. You'd go out there and you'd sit in the bleachers, and this is pre 9/11. This is pre, like even Desert Storm. You'd sit in these bleachers and they'd, launch, or they'd shoot cannons, and you'd have people jumping out of airplanes, parachuting in. You'd have helicopters coming in. You just have like, explosions and gunfire. And it looked really cool. I always thought it was so rad. Then we ended up in Utah. I was 9 years old. Went through everything. And I always had this like just draw, like I'd see a helicopter and I'd be like, oh, that's a Black Hawk, or that's an Apache. I always just knew what they were. I always loved the Army aviation side of things. And so right when I got home from my mission, I made an attempt to go into the Army as a pilot. And I did the ASVAB. I took the ASVAB. I scored high enough. And then I remember I was supposed to go take another test called the AFAST. I showed up down at the MEP station and I waited for, I don't know, it was like 2 hours or something. And my recruiter never showed up. I remember just sitting there like, what's going on? Yeah. And you sit there and I'm in this lobby in this waiting area and there's these like grumpy Marines because they're having to guard this MEP station, or they have to work in the MEP station. If you sit there and you put one foot up on top of the other, like just rest your leg like up, they yell at you because you have to have both feet on the ground. You can't be on a cell phone. It's just they kept yelling at me because I'd like sit back and like kind of relax a little bit. Like, no, you can't sit like that. And I'm like, what is going on? Finally, another recruiter I recognized.
I'm not in the military yet.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, I'm just a civilian, dude. It was weird. This other recruiter shows up. I recognized him from the same offices where my recruiter was from. Turns out he was on his way down to the MEP station and he was on his motorcycle. He had a minivan and he died.
Oh my gosh.
So all of my information, it's stored on his computer, locked with in the Army, they call it a CAT card. I don't even know what that stands for, Common Access Card or something like that. So like hearing that, I was like, you know what? Like, I don't know. Maybe
this is a sign.
Yeah, maybe this is a sign. Like, I'll just do my own thing. So I went, and then that's when I ended up trying to go to college. Fast forward, 2008 now. So 4 years of me being a door-to-door salesman, just kind of being stagnant, not sure what I'm going to do, not what I'm going to be. And I don't tell anybody this time what I'm doing. I just go down and I talk to the recruiter and I walk in and I say, I want to be a pilot. And he's like, yeah, cool. That's amazing. I'm happy to have you here. A lot of people want to be a pilot. Let me show you what we can offer you. Let me show you. I can get you a, whatever $1,000 signing bonus if you go and become this. And he shows me these cool videos. And I remember sitting at his desk for, I don't know, it was probably 2 hours watching recruiting videos for the Army. And every different job they have, it's like an 11 Bravo, an infantryman. This is what you do if you're an 11 Bravo. Like this cool video, it's like 5 minutes long. And he's like, so what do you think? And I'm like, that's cool. And then he shows me another one. He's like, this is a medic. This is an engineer, combat engineer. This is a that. And the last one he shows me is like the Ranger Special Forces videos. And I'm like, these are really, really cool, but I want to be a pilot.
Yeah.
And he's like, he goes, okay, yeah, I get it. That's what a lot of people come in here. A lot of people say that. Why don't you go home for the weekend, take these videos with you, watch them, come back Monday, let me know what you think. And I was like, yeah, whatever. Went home. I don't think I even watched any of the DVDs he gave me. Came back in on Monday morning, whatever. And he said, so what's it going to be? Is it going to be special forces? Or, he rattles off a couple different jobs in the Army. And I say, I still just want to be a pilot, man. And he's like, well, I can't help you. I'm not going to help you with that. Yeah. It just kind of blows me off. Yeah. And I'm not sure. I know recruiters, when they put somebody into the Army, there's like little bonus points that these recruiters can get for putting in specific jobs that the Army's short of. Sure. And right now, 2008, 2009, we're just surging Iraq and Afghanistan, right? So they need anybody they can get as an infantryman. So they're pushing me hard to become an infantryman. I'm like, no, I think that's a cool job, but I just want to be a pilot. Says he can't help me. This guy across the room, it's funny. Yeah, he's from like Alabama or something, super thick Southern accent. He pushes off the desk and he's got this big goofy smile, thick glasses, and stands up. He's like, he's taller than me. I'm 6'3". He's like 6'5", and he's like, I've never really put anybody in the Army yet. And he stutters real bad. And he's like, but I'll help you. And I was like, sheesh, man, this is the best chance I got. I was like, all right, let's get to work, So first things first, I go back down and I have to take the ASVAB test again. The ASVAB is the Armed Skills Vocational and Battery Test. I think that's what it stands for. I don't remember the minimum score you had to get, but obviously I scored high enough for that. And then the next test was the AFAS, which was the Aviation Flight and Skills Aptitude Test, something like that. A bunch of weird questions. Like, would you rather pop a blister on your friend's toe, or would you rather give blood? And like, I don't want to do either of those, but I guess give more blood, like which one's not. And it was honestly probably like 70 questions, just like that weird psychological evaluation. Kind of an actual question. Yeah, that was one of them. Wow. Yeah.
Like to decide how impulsive you might be or how rational you might think through it. Out of the box situation.
Yeah. Just kind of determining what your personality is and would you fit the mold of what they think an Army aviator is going to become. And then after that, and it's all timed, you have like 30 minutes to answer all these questions, and it doesn't hurt you to not answer questions, but it hurts you to answer them wrong. But I don't know how you answer those questions right or wrong, because it's just a weird question. Right. And then the rest of the test was just like they would show you a picture of an attitude indicator from an airplane, and you had to determine if it was turning right, turning left, if it was straight and level, if it was climbing, descending, whatever it was doing. You had to be able to look at this and determine. And this is the one where it was really timed, or you looked at a series of like dots and you established what pattern is going on. Just a bunch of weird stuff. Anyways, I scored high enough on that. And then from there, you go into just this long process. If you have to write a letter about yourself, why you want to be a pilot, you have to get letters of recommendation from people who were in the military. And this is when things kind of started getting out of the bag, because I had to reach out to people that I knew and ask them for help, which I hate doing. I hate asking people for help. So I remember I called, a couple of the people my dad flew with back in the day. Dan Laguna was one of them. Klaus Hauer was another one of them. And I asked them, I said, hey, I want to go into the Army. I want to be a pilot through the Warrant Officer Training Program. Can I get a letter of recommendation for you? And they, of course, were happy to do it. They wrote my letters. And then you go to this local level board in Utah. And you put on your suit and you go sit on this chair. And there were 3 people sitting up on the stage asking you all these just questions about yourself and why we should pick you over the next guy. And back then, supposedly it was really competitive, and they said it was like less than 20% of candidates were getting into or getting through the local level board. And I remember right before I went in there, the guy that I was going through the program or this recruiting process with another guy, he was a private pilot, and they kept telling me like, you're wasting everybody's time. Like, this is kind of what I was hearing along the way from like, not my recruiter, but like the rest of the recruiting office, like the supervisors and stuff, was that everybody who's trying to do this has a discriminator. They either have prior flight experience, or they have a college degree, or there's some kind of discriminator that is going to benefit them that I didn't have. And I just kept thinking, well, like, I don't know, like I wasn't supposed to make it through, this phase or this phase, whatever, but I'm here. So let's just keep pushing. If I get through, I get through. Worst case scenario is somewhere along the lines, someone pulls the plug and says no, and I can't do it.
Are they just trying to weed out people?
Yeah.
Trying to make you quit?
Yeah.
Were you just like,
and that's nailed it, dude. Like, that's like the Army. Like, anything you want to do in the Army, it's just a lot of paperwork, and it's a long drawn out process that if they can just force you to quit, then they don't have to tell you that you failed, So those that are patient enough to actually do everything, like check all the boxes, they typically kind of just get through with it, You
didn't say, hey, I'm the differentiator. Like,
yeah, right.
My iron will. Obviously, I've sat through all this crap you're telling me.
Yeah, exactly.
And I still want to do it. So does that matter?
I remember just as before I went into my local level board in Utah, this sergeant major pulls me aside, and he gave me the same spiel that I'm wasting his recruiter's time, that I have zero chance of making it through this board. And I'm like, oh, dang, dude, like maybe I am wasting someone's time. Go inside, I sit down, answer the questions. It's all about me. I'd been a salesman for 4 years, so I could kind of BS my way through almost anything. And I was a LDS missionary. I could do that. So I was good at rejection, right? Like, that's all I didn't have in for 6 years. Come out of there. But as I'm leaving, they tell me, we're going to go ahead and recommend you for the national level. And I remember thinking, oh, dang, like, wow. And I remember going outside and trying, like, walking the hallway, trying to find that guy. Like, hey, dude, like, I wanted to tell him, but I never found him. And then the national board, it was, you never even see, I don't even know what they look at for that. I just remember it was after New Year's. I had already gone to Fort Carson, Colorado for a flight physical. And that's when I don't know what she was at the time, girlfriend, on and off again, girlfriend, Alexis. That's when she found out what I was doing, because I'd never told her either.
Oh, really?
No.
Really?
Yeah. And so I'm at Fort Carson, and they dilate your pupils so you can do an eye exam. And I had like ignored her text all day long. And finally I get back to her, and I'm like, I'm in Colorado doing this like eye exam thing for work. That's all I said. And she's like, wait, are you joining the military? I was like, I couldn't even see my phone because my eyes were so blurry, but I was like, what the heck did she, like, is that what I think it says? And I remember asking my recruiter, I'm like, hey dude, what does that say? And he reads it to me, and I was like, how did she know?
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, what in the heck? So I asked her how she knows, and she said she just watched Pearl Harbor, and in Pearl Harbor, when they do the eye test or whatever. So she somehow figured it all out. So she was like the only person that knew. So I go, the national board happens, and this is after New Year's now. At the beginning of 2009, sitting in the MEP station, the military entrance processing station in Salt Lake City. And our recruiter, Sergeant Norad, just kept coming out saying 2 minutes. It was like 4 hours just sitting there waiting. And then he comes out and he's like, man, you guys don't know what you did. You're doing something right in your lives because you're both going to flight school. And I was just like elated, right? Like super stoked. So I go to flight school. Basic training was in, Fort Benning, Georgia.
Did they ever tell you what your differentiator was in their eyes? Like,
you never
what
hear
set
anything.
you apart? You never
hear anything.
Interesting.
It's just, I have no idea.
I love it. You had all this negative feedback, all this resistance, all these people telling you you're not going to make it.
Mm-hmm. Which is like going along with how I felt about, I want to be a pilot, but I can't do it because I suck at math. Like that. And that was like in my head the whole time too. Like
reinforced from like your teachers at school that were telling you those things. Right?
Yeah. So I'm just like thinking, man, like I am probably wasting everybody's time, but I feel like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I feel like I'm just kind of answering my call, that I felt like spiritually guided to do this. And I just kind of felt like along the way, if this is meant to be, everything's going to fall into place. Everything's going to happen. And sure enough, it did, man. Basic training, 2 months long. It was pretty miserable down in Georgia. It was the summertime. I was there like June, July. Super hot, great weather. The fire ants are amazing.
Fire ants.
After basic training, I went down to I went from Fort Benning, Georgia to Fort Rucker, Alabama. That's where I had another 6 weeks of, it was called Warrant Officer Candidate School. That was how I got my commission to become an officer, because I didn't have a college degree. and I was going through a program called the Warrant Officer Program to be a pilot. A warrant officer in the Army is just a specialized, you have a specialized field that you're basically a professional at that particular field. They have aviation, they have artillery, they have all different branches of the military have warrant officers. The majority of warrant officers, though, in the military or in the Army are pilots. And 6 weeks of just more kind of learning how to be an officer, more of like the dumb stuff of like, you didn't fold your t-shirt correctly, or your room has a little speck of dust right here. And so they'd mess everything up just to focus on, they're trying to teach you attention to detail. You hear that little phrase over and over and over again, attention to detail, attention to detail. If the small things in your room or in your personal life are distractions, then the attention to detail when you become a pilot could translate and become issues as well. It's kind of the focus of what that attention to detail is. You want to focus on every little thing, which later on you kind of understand why that attention to detail. It's like, okay, like, yeah, it was stupid back then, but I kind of understand why they made us focus on some of that stupid stuff. I finished that course and I graduated from that as whatever. Then you become a W01. They call you a WOJ, a Warrant Officer Junior Grade. Kind of it's not a very positive term, if you're the WOJ.
Well, sounds like a stooge.
Yeah. Like, you're the WOJ, go stock the fridge, like don't even talk to me unless the whole refrigerator is completely stocked. That's kind of the basis of that.
Are these higher ranking people treated you this way? As I was going to ask, as a warrant officer, are you treated like an officer, or are you treated like someone that enlisted and
the only person
you get to be in the door with other officers?
The only person you're an officer to are like very junior enlisted people. They see you, and the only time you're an officer is when you have to salute them back. Oh. But other than that, like you're just the new guy. The FNG, the effing new guy.
The FNG.
It's like my first duty station out of flight school. So you go through flight school, and it's 8 weeks of primary. You learn how to be a pilot, just, how to hover a helicopter, how to fly a traffic pattern, how to talk on the radio. You have to memorize all your emergency procedures. Just, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on. And this whole time I keep thinking like eventually like they're going to find me. I'm going to be found out. Like I'm going to find out that I suck at math, and
they're going to kick you out.
Yeah. Really? Like I'm like, yeah, like
even though you were in and how the training
like,
still.
I keep thinking like eventually we're going to get to this math portion that's going to like flip me on my head, and I'm going to get booted, but it never happened.
Man, I think that just not to change the subject, and I want to come right back to this, but I think it just underscores again the importance of surrounding your kids with positive influences in their lives and being able to be in control of who is influencing their vision of who they can become, and
absolutely,
and what they can achieve. And I don't know. It's because it just boggles my mind that you still at that point were like, they're gonna find out I'm a fake. They're gonna find out I don't need to be here. Yeah, I wanted to bring that up because our wives talked about that on their previous episodes about how important it is for your kids to be mentored by adults that, are safe, but they're not necessarily authority figures over them. Mm-hmm. There's just like, friends or appendages to a business that you're interacting with, and things like, we have welders come to the farm and they would teach me how to weld.
Yeah.
And I was 6 and it was great.
I mean, right? I think just having the positive influences in your lives, like, kids are going to struggle with what they struggle with, but if we can find their strengths and help them overcome what they feel like are their issues, right? Like I wasn't done with math. I was just slow. Like I was just slower to learn, because eventually, like, I mean, when's the last time you really used like X plus Y
equals MX plus B?
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like,
slope intercept.
Like, yeah, I mean, life is.
How do you remember that?
Well, he actually showed me a meme yesterday.
Yeah, right.
He's like, 1,000th time. It was a picture of 1,000th time of when I've never had to use Y equals MX plus B for anything.
Exactly.
Right?
But like every day, all day, you're problem solving in that same way, right? You have your variables and you're just solving for what the end result is. But you're sitting there in a controlled environment with a teacher that's writing up on the whiteboard or the chalkboard, and I'm not getting these concepts. And so I keep thinking, this whole time that, oh man, I'm going to be found out, and they're just going to we're going to have this math lesson and I'm going to get kicked out.
I had a guidance counselor in high school come to me, and we did some type of an aptitude test or whatever. And I had decent grades, but he came to me, I didn't have great grades. I wasn't top of the class. I didn't really care. For my own self-esteem, I didn't need to be top of the class.
Right.
I knew I was going to be whatever I was going to be in life. And I was fairly secure in being able to obtain that. But my guidance counselor told me, he was like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I want to be a doctor. And he was like, oh man, Lonnie, people like you, you might want to consider going to like a vocational school or like a tech school, because people like you, they don't become doctors. Like people like this guy. And he pointed out a certain guy in the class. The name was Jason. He was like, this guy's going to be a doctor.
Totally.
You know? And I was just like, I really thought in my mind, F you, dude, I'm going to invite you to my graduation. Mm-hmm.
Well, that
and because I was like, how dare you? You're supposed to be the guy that inspires me to achieve and like to become great. And you're telling me like, no, your dream, forget it. Like, people like you.
Like, who are you to tell me who I can and can't be or what I can and can't achieve, right?
Right.
Like I remember I would compare myself to my friends and peers or whatever in school and think like, man, that guy is like way smarter than me.
Right.
You know what I mean? But what? Based on what? You know, based on what the public school system tells you you should or you shouldn't be. Like that's the baseline, but I don't know that it's the correct baseline.
Right.
Because everybody, you know, we grow differently, we learn differently, and we achieve at our own pace sometimes.
So how did you get it to from this point to, you know, being a combat helicopter pilot? And, you know, you mentioned you had so many missions and so many hours and all these things of combat flight time. And you were not just flying, like you were flying a Chinook.
Yeah.
Right. So how did you get to that point?
Well,
from getting this mountain of self-doubt, right? You have, you're kind of, what'd you call it? The new schlub. What are you?
The Woj?
The Woj. Yeah, you're the Woj. You're got all this self-doubt. How do you accomplish? Because when I became aware of you, as my wife's cousin's husband, to me it was like, here's this badass that's flying these helicopters and then, you know, in Afghanistan and like doing this stuff, and all we saw was from the outside looking in. I never knew that this was there.
So yeah, it's 8 weeks of primary, 8 weeks of instruments where you learn how to fly the helicopter on instruments, and then 3 weeks of BWS, basic warfighting skills. And I was never the top performer in flight school, but I wasn't the worst. I was just right in the middle of the road. And eventually we all finish, and then you go into your advanced airframe selection, and I picked Chinooks.
Prepare to be captivated by the extraordinary legend of the CH-47 Chinook helicopter, a true icon that reigns supreme in the skies of aviation. With its awe-inspiring tandem rotor design and unmatched versatility, the Chinook has transcended the boundaries of mere machinery. At first glance, it may seem contradictory that the CH-47 Chinook possesses both a massive carrying capacity and impressive speed. However, a closer inspection of this magnificent machine unveils a multitude of features that have firmly established its position as one of the world's most recognizable helicopters.
Were you able to select, or did they select, you know, you have the capability to fly this based on your scores, or you can fly Apache?
Yeah, you go into an OML, an order of merit list, and
or can you pick? Like, could you have picked to fly whatever you wanted?
I could have picked. The only thing other than a Chinook for me in my selection that was available was an Apache. There were it was like a Kiowa went number one.
Just an Apache. I know.
A Kiowa went number one, and there was a Black Hawk, and then it was a random selection. It's all based on needs of the Army at that moment. They say we need this many pilots, and so you're at the mercy of what the Army says.
Gotcha.
So I picked the one Chinook that was up on the board.
Said a Coyote went.
A Kiowa. Yeah, that's.
Was that like what everybody wanted to fly?
No, the Army got rid of that helicopter. It was a scout helicopter. I think they should have kept it around, but that's, you know, whatever. The Army, they make dumb decisions all the time. Go to Chinook flight school. It was like 20 something weeks long. I loved every minute of it. I had great instructors. I loved flying the Chinook, and the Chinook, it's basically a school bus with rotor blades on top, the tandem rotor system.
Yeah.
And finished my first duty station out of flight school was Germany. They had just fielded the F model Chinook, which is what I flew. I was like the third or fourth F model class to graduate from Fort Rucker. So I go to Germany, and they had D models, the old model there, and they had just come home from a deployment from Afghanistan. So most of the guys were still on block leave, post-deployment block leave. They start trickling in, and there's this new W1 there, this new Woj. And I took I took the brunt of some of this crap. Like, they'd come in, they'd look at the refrigerator, like a Coke label would be kind of crooked a little bit, and so they'd throw everything out. And just the dumb crap, you know,
just hazing.
Yeah. Just hazing, you know, like, or I'd come in and the refrigerator would be empty and everybody had stuffed their trash into the refrigerator, you know, like, or, you know, like the bathroom wasn't clean enough and just dumb stuff. But it's like, whatever, I'll put up with the crap. I'll play the game.
Promotes camaraderie.
Yeah, it's fun. Like I'm not getting upset about it because this is what Wojs are supposed to be treated like, right? You know, like just go with it. And then it becomes like, this dude's not so bad, you know? Like I just kind of do as the senior guys are asking me to do what I'm being asked, and eventually make it through. And I was there in Germany for 1 year, and I went on my first deployment as a co-pilot. I say co-pilot because the career progression of an Army pilot is typically you come out of flight school knowing nothing. You know how to fly a helicopter, but that's about it. You don't know how to be a mission pilot. You don't know how to do mission planning. You don't know a lot. You don't know what you don't know, right? You have to go experience it. So I flew in Germany as a co-pilot for a year, went to on my first deployment in 2012 to RC West, Regional Command West in Afghanistan, which we ended up being at Shindan Air Base. It was like 50, 100 miles or something like that off the border of Iran. I don't remember exactly, but did a lot of cool operations there. Most of the time, most of those flights were daytime ring routes, we called them. We would just go resupply all the outlying FOBs, the forward operating bases, bring them water, food, bullets, pick up people, just kind of move people around the battlefield. And then I remember it was the night of July 3rd into July 4th of 2012 that I did my first, they called it DA mission, direct action mission. So it was a nighttime. We were working with the Italian Special Forces going after some bomb maker down near Farah province in Afghanistan. And that was my first direct action mission, because there's the GS mission, which is the general support, which is just kind of ring routes. You go out and fly for 8 hours a day usually. And then the direct action missions are just a lot more direct. They're deliberate. Usually takes a 72-hour planning cycle. The customers, or in this case, the Italian Special Operations Unit, came to us with an objective. And so we planned off of the information they gave us on how we were going to go do that and execute that mission. And everything, I guess, went off without a hitch. And that was my first taste of actual like combat flying. And, you know, you don't know what to expect on these first combat missions like that. And I was
going to ask, like, were you nervous?
Oh, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
Like it is so terrifying. You know, like I'm this new pilot. I'm in Afghanistan. It's dark. Obviously we fly these missions at nighttime. And so you're flying with NVGs on. And I remember thinking I don't even want to try and get close to the other helicopters, because I suck at formation flying. I'm too new at it. And there were 4 helicopters on the assault that night, 2 Blackhawks and 2 Chinooks. And there were obviously other aircraft involved, like Apaches and stuff. But in our formation, it was just the 4 helicopters, 2 Blackhawks, 2 Chinooks. And I don't remember where we were in the formation, but I remember I couldn't keep where I was supposed to be. So I was with another senior instructor pilot that kept telling me, hey, like he kept taking the controls and putting me in position. And then he would give me back the controls and say, try and stay right here, you know, keep your formation tight or whatever. And I just kept kind of terrified, you know, but it's so terrifying landing in the dust, landing at nighttime. You have all this pressure. You have 30 plus dudes in the back of the helicopter that are going to assault this village and either kill or capture this bad guy who's facilitating bombs in Western and Southern Afghanistan. So that was the first one I did. And then the rest, I remember that one, but then the rest, they just kind of blur together. Came home from that first deployment a year later, 10 months later, and got signed off as a pilot in command. And now like the fun and the real learning begins as a helicopter pilot. All
right, Sam, dude, I think right there is a great cliffhanger and opportunity for us to segue into our next episode.
Yeah.
And so I want to close this out. Thank you guys for listening and viewing our podcast. And we will be back with our very next episode. And we're going to continue with Sam Scheid. Don't forget to, again, like, share, and subscribe. If you found value in this episode, we know your friends and family will as well. And we'll see you next time on The Value Script.